Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, episode 17. We got our first best on best tournament for the first time in 9 years with four nations kicking off. Babs, how are we feeling?
I'm excited. I don't know how many people are excited. You keep going back and forth. I see in your comments some people not excited.
Yeah, they're just like Debbie Downers. I don't know. Like, if you're an American and Canadian not excited for this, I understand if your team's like a top tier contender. I guess I'm a little bit biased as and I understand like my team, Brock Nelson's going to have a bigger role in terms of winning in this tournament than on the New York Islanders. But like, it's just going to be awesome. I don't know. Like, there definitely is a risk for injury. And as an Islanders fan, I would know that because back in 2014, Tavares got hurt. But it's going to be really fun. I'm obviously hoping against injury. It's only 7 games total, so I don't think anything's going to happen like that. And it's best on best hockey. Like, how can you? It's dream scenarios of mainly with Canada, obviously now that Quinn Hughes isn't playing, but Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon. Like, if you're a fan of hockey, how do you not fucking love this tournament?
Austin Matthews has been in the NHL for how long? This is his first time ever repping Team USA because he was on the gimmick Team North America, the last thing.
Yeah, same. So yeah, McKinnon, McDavid, they that's their only best on best experience playing on some bullshit team. It was fun, but Team North America under 23. I gave my full predictions. I have Canada winning the tournament. I have a bold upset of Finland beating the United States by a score of 2-1, which you thought you absolutely clowned me out for, which I understand. I don't like gun to my head. If I had to pick the game, I'd pick United States. But I think that with this tournament, Canada and the United States are definitely the two favorites. Sweden is not far behind, but I think that their center depth lacks a little bit with guys like Pettersson, Zibanejad, Eriksson Ek, and Lindholm all kind of shitting their pants this season relative to their expectations. And Finland will need a miracle given that defense core. What's your overall thoughts? Because people have not heard your thoughts yet.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too repetitive on what you said. You know, you put out a very good video going over the entire tournament. You guys should watch that. Yeah. The thing about best on best is that even Finland, who's clearly the weakest roster, and they are the weakest by far, even they have a goalie, right, who can steal games, who can go on, a 3-game long run. Will UC Saros make that kind of a run? I kind of doubt it. We haven't seen much of that this year behind the Nashville shit show.
Too, yeah.
But, he can. He's capable. He does have it in him, right? Saros can get a shutout against a much better team. It's happened before. It could happen this week, maybe a couple times even. That said, yeah, Finland's really in a rough spot. And the Heiskanen injury was bad, but I feel like the Ristolainen one was even worse. Not because Ristolainen's a better player than Heiskanen, but like you're already so shallow on D, and you're already having to replace one top guy. Ristolainen's not amazing, but he has been like decent-ish this year at least. So to have, he's can't go. Now you're down to your number 8 choice having to play minutes there. It's really rough for them.
Yeah, I think you could argue. I don't know about over Heiskanen, but I get what you mean. The second one really, really hurt. But I think losing Ristolainen is probably a bigger impact than Quinn Hughes being out. As crazy as it is to say, you're inserting Noah Hannafin into the lineup, Jake Sanderson, high level NHLers. Instead of Ristolainen, who has been pretty good the last season and a half, you have like Nicholas I should know this as a Senators Glazer, Manipola or something like that, who can't even get in the lineup over Travis Hamonic. I know he probably should be in the lineup over Travis Hamonic. But even with how bad Finland's defense core is, I still think we need to show it like some respect. It's not like a World Juniors where it's like completely massive gaps. These guys are still like NHLers for the most part. Nico Mikkola is a very underrated guy in Florida the last couple of years. Esa Lindell is one of the best defensemen in the NHL. So it's not like they're going to have no clue what to do against the United States, Sweden, and Canada. It's like there's going to be 3-on-1s nonstop. Like they're all just going to play defensive hockey, not try to get up on the rush and be extremely offensive. Like it's Finland. They're going to play team-friendly defensive hockey and cohesive with a lot of chemistry. That 2016 team, there's a lot of members of that, and they tend to play for their nation come the World Championships. So I'm kind of, again, I don't think Finland's actually going to do really much in the tournament, but I would put, if you gave me odds of like plus 150 that they beat one of the 3 teams, I might sprinkle that. I don't even know what the odds would be. I might be hammering Finland every single money line because I feel like they are being disrespected so much. But yeah, when it comes to, we'll get to Sweden now. I think, the Senators, as I mentioned before, and in net, they're rolling with Gustafsson in the first game, which I think, we're recording this before the first game, Canada versus Sweden, by the way. So by the time you see this, hopefully Sweden won. But yeah, it's interesting that Olmark's not getting the nod for them in game one. He's dealing with an injury, but I guess they're trying to rest him up a little bit even more. But you really can't in this kind of tournament where it's 3 goddamn games.
I mean, Gustafsson has arguably been just as good this year, right? If not even a little bit better on this season.
He's cooled off a little bit of late, but yeah.
Of late, but based on the season-long goals saved above expected, that favors Gustafsson. It's a fine problem to have, right? Sweden has 2 goalies that are better than anyone Canada can throw out. That's a good situation to be in.
Binnington, I know like this could age poorly, and Binnington shuts them out tonight. So like you might even be watching this if that happens. We'll cut it out. But yeah, it was very interesting to see Canada go with Binnington, not to move on from Sweden so quickly. Sweden, great defense core. Centers are a little bit shaky. Great wingers.
The wings are great. I do want to talk a little bit about the wings here before we move on, because I feel like this wing collection is some of the most underrated guys from like star level, underrated in the league, right? Philip Forsberg, 40-goal scorer when he's healthy. Adrian Kempe can be a 40-goal guy, has been a 40-goal guy. Jesper Bratt, well over a point per game, really good two-way player. The leading goal scorer in the NHL this season of anyone in this tournament is William Nylander.
Yeah.
It's not a Canadian. It's not an American. It's Nylander. So Sweden's wings are really good. And, you know, for the most part, they're very good two-way players. There's not really a whole lot of like the one-dimensionality, which, you know, most of the players for most of the teams aren't super one-dimensional. It's best on best. But it is worth shouting out, I think, how Sweden just has, you know, a really deep group that plays the whole ice on the wing.
Yeah. The wingers are definitely probably the strength of this team. In terms of the defense, I think their left-handed defensemen are awesome. You got Dahlin, you got Forsling, you got Ekholm. Right side's a little bit shaky though. That can maybe be cause for some concern. Anderson is playing pretty bad to start this season. Erik Karlsson doesn't play defense at all. I'm trying to think who would be there. Did they bring
Hedman?
Yeah, Hedman's a lefty.
Hedman?
Hedman's a lefty. So like it's gonna be weird. I guess they're gonna throw one of the guys on the left side because Brodin's also a lefty. They got 2 natural right-handed guys, and they're gonna have to throw someone on the right side. That's gonna be interesting.
I trust it enough. I mean, I think Brodin and Ekholm are 2 of the great stabilizers in hockey. When you talk about defensemen, like those are 2 guys who you can put an Erik Karlsson next to one of them, and now the weakness is covered, right? An Ekholm-Karlsson pair, you don't need to worry so much about Karlsson being all offense. Ekholm's going to cover. He's doing that in Edmonton at a really high level every night.
Yeah. I think because you have those lockdown defensive guys, it's going to be solid overall. But moving on to Canada, we talked about the goaltending. Yeah, I think Aiden Hill should have got to start. I understand Binnington has maybe more experience, but Aiden Hill's playing better this year and has won a Stanley Cup. What do you think?
I don't like the Binnington choice at all. I think that, you know, anytime Jordan Binnington plays a game of hockey, there's like a 5% chance that he's going to have the most embarrassing meltdown you've ever seen and lose the game mentally, you know, well before it's over. I don't like that pick. It's not that any of the alternatives are so much better, but it seems really strange to me to go with Binnington, someone who's so inconsistent and especially so, you know, hot-tempered, mentally soft as him.
I think it's got to be, it's weird, probably just Doug Armstrong being the general manager. I don't think he's general manager for this tournament, but like he's the Olympic general manager. So he's probably like, we're going to Binnington, even though they also have Peter DeBoer on the, not Peter DeBoer, Cassidy on the coaching staff, who obviously works with Aiden Hill. But yeah, I think if that's going to be anything in terms of Team Canada's downfall, it's definitely goaltending. There's some concern with the defense core. A guy like Drew Doughty immediately gets inserted on the second pair. He's been playing like 26, 27 minutes a night as soon as he got back in LA. So it appears like he's healthy, as well as like Colton Parayko is a good lockdown defensive guy, but doesn't really offer that much offensively. So maybe the right side's a little bit shaky for Canada. But yeah, they're forwards, defensemen, loaded. It's going to come down to goaltending, especially now that they probably have they're on par with the United States in terms of defense. Now the U.S. doesn't have Quinn Hughes.
I'm just hung up on you talk about Parayko as a defensive guy, and you know, yes, sure, but again, if the competition at this best on best level for a stabilizer is Brodin and Ekholm on Sweden, or for the U.S., you have Slavin over there, you have Brock Faber. I do think Parayko is very clearly a full tier below those guys.
Definitely.
So I have some questions about the defense too on Canada. it's a solid group all around, probably not like an amazing group. They could have picked better guys.
Yeah, it's clear that they prioritize chemistry to start with Pietrangelo. He's nursing his potentially career-ending injury that he still played NHL
through.
games through. But yeah, I think that they were going for chemistry, and Pietrangelo being out kind of threw a massive wrench in that, because their top four would have been guys that play on a regular basis every single season. Maybe not the best defensively, but you can make up from that in chemistry. Moving on to the United States. Yeah, I still think they're by far the most well-balanced team. That's kind of like self-explanatory, considering they have the best goaltender in the entire NHL. Even without Quinn Hughes, they still have two top seven defensemen in Adam Fox and Zach Rowensky. McAvoy, when he's on, is a top 10 defenseman. Slavin's one of the best defensive defensemen. But I do think that the offensive oomph from that blue line does not lack, but it does take a serious hit without Quinn Hughes, and that's something that I'm somewhat concerned of, generating offense from the blue line.
I am not so concerned about that. I think Adam Fox and Charlie McAvoy, you have guys who are good enough to take you there. For me, the concern really is the forward defense from the U.S. I was looking through the penalty kill lines, because it's, this kind of tournament, you win and lose it in the margins. And the penalty kill that I saw the U.S. was planning to run out here, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, and Dylan Larkin, that's really not ideal, right? Especially because Canada has guys
Marner,
like Sorelli, Jarvis, Marner, like some of the primary penalty killers for their team. Sweden too, right? Eriksson Ek, Jesper Bratt, like great defensive forwards. The U.S. really doesn't have that, right? They have physical forwards. The Kachucks and Kreider are physical. JT Miller is physical. That's not necessarily the same thing as being like good back checkers, responsible positioning. I think the U.S. could have some issues there if we get into not just power play penalty kill, but holding a 1-goal lead in the last 5 minutes. Put your shutdown line out there. The U.S. shutdown line, the names don't impress me so much in that kind of a situation. I don't think that's a huge problem if you can outscore guys or if Hellebuck's going to shut people down, but it's a concern I have.
Yeah, I think they might be a little bit poor off the rush because they didn't bring guys like Jason Robertson that's so good defensively. Tage Thompson has taken massive steps. But yeah, you're right. I think the offensive talent is there, that in the forward core and even to a degree in the defense core, that if they play to their best and Hellebuck doesn't lay a stinker, they probably should win this tournament. I just think my prediction was 4-3 Canada in that final game. As much as I hate to say it, like, we've seen guys on that Canada team continuously rise to the occasion come the playoffs. Not that the U.S. team is like pussies and mentally weak. I think that they got some dogs for sure. But given the experience in that situation, I think I would slightly lean Canada. What's your pick? Have you given away your pick? No, right?
I haven't said it yet. No,
I'm taking Sweden.
I'm taking the U.S. over Sweden in the final.
Okay, so you're anti-Canada.
I do think Sweden has much better goaltending than Canada.
So you think that? And you guys already know the score of this game. Do you think that Sweden's going to win tonight's game against Canada?
I do, yeah.
Okay, I really want Canada to lose. Like, the mental gymnastics that will be made, like, they'll just keep on talking about 2010, 2014. Like, if you think that people think the tournament's worthless right now, and honestly, if the United States lose, I'm definitely going to make those jokes too. But if Canada loses this tournament, it immediately gets thrown out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the question though, right? Like, how seriously will everyone take it?
I think people are going to take it serious.
The fact that the only guy who was like an objector to it was Canadian, that kind of gives me a little bit concerned on how serious they're taking it. The fact that Canada, their team has several guys who were on the 2014 Olympic team. The U.S. has none of those. That might end up being a factor as far as like U.S. motivation, that, maybe Sidney Crosby is not super invested. He's
battling through injury.
120%ing this.
I think what I would say is the thing that really helps this is it is like a primer for 2026. Not saying if Connor McDavid doesn't go give 1,000%, he's not going to be on 2026. But for a lot of guys, this is a tryout to make the 2026 Olympics games, as much as a world championships also is a tryout. Like, it's go time, because the 2026 games definitely do mean a lot more than this Four Nations. But if you want to solidify your spot, you need to have a good tournament in this little mini round robin championship game. So I think people are going to go balls to the wall. I think that I think, yeah, you maybe don't dive, go all out for a loose puck or something like that to to block a shot or something like that. But I think for the most part, we're going to see a lot of effort from these guys because it's the best players in the world going at it for their home country. It's not some bullshit all-star game.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's definitely better than an all-star game.
That's the other thing that's stupid about the criticism. Like, we usually have a 5 to 6 day break from an all-star game that you guys also hate. Why are you still bitching about this? You're literally missing like 2 regular season games because of this compared to the normal schedule.
And while we're talking really about like how serious is this, how much do people care? I want to do the thing that I love doing of talking about the money and the ratings and all of that stuff. Because the real answer for why did they never do a second World Cup of hockey is that the TV ratings in the U.S. were completely dreadful for that. They were, really. The Canada-U.S. game over there got 760,000 viewers, which is less than some regular season games. That's less than Bruins Golden Knights on ABC this last week. So...
Were those games on ABC? I assume
they were on ESPN for the most part. So some difference there, right? It's not 1-to-1. Those games were preseason, not middle of the season, which I think this being at the same time slot as the Olympics makes it feel more legit versus a preseason one. But the argument of, well, people would definitely rather watch this than meaningless regular season games. They did not prefer the World Cup of Hockey to meaningless regular season games. That's why there was not a second World Cup of Hockey until apparently in the mid-Olympic cycle, just announced by Bettman, they are going to do that.
Yeah.
Except, I bet if the TV numbers are really bad for this, they're probably going to back off of that. We'll see. There's no way to know, but I have questions in there.
Yeah. Speaking of 2028, we all hope that's like 8 to 12 teams. Not, I would say the 2016, although it was a good tournament, it was fun. It was kind of gimmicky with the Team North America.
The Team North America and the Team Europe was gimmicky. I think if you have it just be 6 teams round robin, that would work fine if you want to do it that way. I think that having a Team North America and a Team Europe just makes it kind of feel like a joke.
Yeah, so that's what I think somewhat factors into it. But I think that this, again, I'm not a TV ratings expert like you. I'm not sure USA versus Finland will do monster numbers, but I think on that Saturday night, week after the Super Bowl, is the NBA All-Star Game, when's that a week? Is that next week? Hopefully. For the sake of the NHL, if they lose the slam dunk contest, that'd be pretty embarrassing. But I think this is a really good opportunity. I saw some really dumb tweet. I don't know if I sent it to you, but I quote tweeted it being like, the NHL fumbled the week after the Super Bowl having this. I think that this is the perfect thing for them to do. Your average American fan, like my college friends that didn't give a shit about hockey, like, they're way more inclined to throw on USA versus Canada on a Saturday night before they go out than Columbus versus Detroit or something like that. Say if they had the Stadium Series this weekend, like, nothing gets people going like patriotism.
Yeah,
even nowadays.
International hockey will do better for the casuals, you hope.
Yes.
It comes down in a lot of ways to, like, A, marketing, B, the quality on the ice, the play itself has to be good. Just, try to get people interested. I mean, the World Juniors is an interesting example, right? Where no matter how good or bad Canada does, Canada takes that extremely seriously, and a ton of people watch it. And the U.S. has won it back-to-back years, and 99.7% of Americans do not know that tournament exists. It's on the NHL network. No one who's not a hockey diehard even knows that tournament happens. The U.S. can win it, and less than 1 million people will know it happened. Less than that will care. You need to do better than that for sure on this kind of tournament.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be like a rallying cry like Saturday night. Your average American, but yeah, I do think that those people, that your average 18 to 40-year-old sports fan, just in general, not even hockey fan, if they see that scrolling around, you say, oh, it's Connor McDavid, that's Sidney Crosby, that's Austin Matthews, that's like 3 out of the 8 NHL players that I know of. Yeah, I'll throw it on. Like, why not? It's not obviously going to have that allure. Like, I think next year at the Olympics, and it sucks because the games are going to be at like 10 a.m.
They won't be that. No, Milan's only a 5-hour difference.
The gold medal game is at like 7.
Really?
Yeah, it's on a Sunday because they need to get it all done before like the closing ceremonies. The women got it good. They had theirs on Saturday at like 2 p.m. But Yeah, I don't think it's going to be some kind of rallying cry like the Olympics maybe would be, but I think it's going to be awesome because, again, people are desperate for sports right now. The NBA's regular season product is kind of utter shit, and the NFL just ended. I'm really looking forward to it, and by the time you are listening to this, there's hopefully already been a monster game. Like, I'm sure Canada is going to treat this basically like the Olympics. Like, they have a decent amount to prove because although they did they win the 2016 World Cup of hockey? I don't remember exactly. I blocked it out because the United States, I think, went like 0-3.
The U.S. went 0-3, and the entire U.S. just blocked out the rest of it.
Yeah, like they won in 2010, they won in 2014, but recently at the World Juniors, they've been blanked the last 2 years. So they're definitely going to be jacked up for this. I would imagine it stinks for Swedish and Finnish fans because it's what's 5 hours ahead. So
yeah, and it's kind of inherently not fair that you have two teams playing home games and two teams on the road.
Yeah,
like that.
It's weird. It's weird that it's not even a 7 p.m. puck drop. It's 8 p.m. That seems kind of BS. Thankfully, because of President's Day, it's going to be a Monday or Saturday and Monday, so they'll be able to see it at normal times then, or night games for them then. But yeah, I think it really should be awesome. We're going to go over some breakout players that we think maybe will shock the world and really impress. Up first for me for the United States, I think Matthew Boldy, after struggling a little bit since Kaprizov has went down, I think he can maybe put the world on notice. Slated to play on the third line right now with JT Miller and Brady Tkachuk. Yeah, he's a guy that I like a lot, might be required, and you know that Bill Guerin's going to want him to play a decent amount. I think he might ball out, get 3 goals and 2 assists in this tournament or something like that.
My pick for the U.S. is going to be Charlie McAvoy. I think he's going to be forced to take a more offensive role than usual, given the Quinn Hughes injury. I mean, that's right. You break it down. Adam Fox, amazing replacement defenseman. Zach Werenski, amazing replacement for that kind of offensive firepower.
Yeah.
But, the depth chart shrinks up. McAvoy's always a two-way guy. And the point totals, you always kind of expect him to give just a little bit more than he does. Feels like he's kind of stagnated offensively the last couple seasons. But I think he's going to have a big showing this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick, especially because I think Fox and Slavin are going to be especially used against Canada to kind of slow down their top 6, while Werenski and McAvoy is probably going to play more of an offensive role. You want to go for Canada? I would suggest.
I'll go for Canada. I'm thinking Seth Jarvis is going to be.
Yeah, you go.
Now, he's kind of used to being a role player on his team right now. I think that's going to translate really well to a bottom 6 role for Canada.
I will go with I'll go with Brandon Hagel. I feel like he's a guy that kind of gets underrated a decent amount just because there's so many dogs on Tampa Bay. Now that he's going to be away from Nikita Kucherov, he can really show out and ball out outside of the Tampa Bay system. Just a very good 2-way winger, and if he plays up in the lineup, I think he can kill it. I'll go for Sweden. Ricard Raquel on the second line, playing with Pedersen and Zibanejad as of right now. It's pretty crazy because he didn't make the team initially. Now he's on their second line because he has been that good. He's putting up 35 and 35 pace on Pittsburgh, and especially for Pittsburgh, you want this guy to ball out at this tournament and then maybe trade him because last year he was untradeable with 3.5 years at $5 million. Now it's looking like a pretty valuable contract. So yeah, I think Raquel has a lot to play for, because it's not like he's playing anything at the NHL regular season. And if anything, him balling out can get him out of Pittsburgh and back to an actual contender.
Yeah, it's a solid pick. I'll go Jesper Bratt for Sweden. I think he's genuinely would be in the top 6 for Canada or the U.S. on their wings. He's just so good, both sides of the ice. I'm calling 3 goals in 4 games, including a shorthanded one.
Oh,
that's my bold pick there. Jesper Bratt, shorthanded
against two. Who are we saying?
I have no idea against who. I just feel
Canada.
Like that's the long shot bet that's going to hit.
You've already seen it. It happened. Babiak called his shot. I'll go for Finland. I'll go Nico Mikkola. He's going to have to be a top pair guy. Probably going to have to be the number 2 behind Esa Lindell or playing with Esa Lindell. Yeah, he's been pretty underrated in Florida the last couple years, so yeah, he's going to have to play 24 to 28 minutes a night on that team. Maybe he'll spark something offensively because Lindell, he's not even be on the top power play because Finland's running out 5 forwards like they should. But yeah, maybe he can get involved offensively.
I'll go rubbing up against your pick there and say Lindell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another guy who he's currently a role player on his NHL team, but he's young. He's getting better every year. Great playmaker. I think a lot. I think he might be the biggest gap of like people didn't know his name in the casual hockey fan sphere 3 weeks ago, and they will know it 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, that's our Four Nations preview. Canada, tough loss to Sweden. We're gonna move on to my New York Islanders. Noah Dobson last Wednesday. The Islanders Twitter sphere went a little bit crazy about Noah Dobson potentially getting traded. Some guys that have previously had inside scoops, Ethan, GSN, the People's Insider, kind of hinted at Noah Dobson being on the block. Then Mark DeMacco reported that he was. The Islanders beat reporter that I trust the most, Stefan Rosner, said that there was some truth to it. And now Noah Dobson has switched agents out of nowhere. He's gone from Andrew Maloney to Judd Moldaver. So that, I'm not saying a trade is coming in the near future, but the future of Noah Dobson is cloudy. If he's changing agents, whether that's to renegotiate with the New York Islanders, get a new look in terms of battling with Lamoriello for an extension, or if that's, I might get traded soon. I don't trust this guy to negotiate with a new team that I don't have a pre-existing relationship with. It's going to be very interesting. I'm of the camp that if Noah Dobson's set on getting some like 8-year, $8.5+ million contract, I 1000% understand trading him. Although the underlying numbers suggest that he's been even better this year than last year, I do not think that has been the case. If anything, I think it's Romanov that has been playing better this season that has elevated his numbers to a degree. Good top pair offensive defenseman in the right situation with the right partner, but not a true number one. I think you share that sentiment. So if they can trade him for a more high-end forward, whether that's a Pettersson, who's apparently might be off the trade market, but Jordan Kyrou or something like that, and bring in some much-needed forward talent that the Islanders might need, especially if they end up trading Brock Nelson, that we're also going to get into shortly, I'm all for it. And, yeah, the Noah Dobson tenure might be coming to an end. What do you think?
I think Dobson's in a weird spot because if you ask me, is Noah Dobson a good hockey player? Yes, of course. Definitely top four defenseman, probably a top pair level guy. He definitely does lean a lot more offensive than defensive. Although, like you said, the defensive numbers are surprisingly pretty good this year and show a lot of improvement just looking at the charts. But I do have questions also on how serious or sustainable that is. All of that said, that Dobson's a really good player. Is he essential to this current Islanders team? Yeah. Obviously, the answer is no. We know the answer is no because they just replaced him with waiver wire guys and played their best hockey of the year.
Yeah.
So, like, what does Dobson's future contract look like? I'm not sure. I think if he wants something long-term, Philip Hronek is the absolute floor, right? That was a guy who's, was kind of in a number one-ish role for part of his career, clearly was not a number one defenseman, but, a solid, good top four guy. He got 7 years by $7.25. That was in a flat cap environment, and I think Dobson's a little bit better than Hronek.
Yeah, and 2 years
so I
younger.
think like 7 by 7.5 is the absolute minimum. If it's an open market thing, he could get $8 million. For all we know, maybe he wants a bridge, right? Take him right into UFA spot. What does a trade look like for Dobson? Again, the only real comparison we have, right, is Hronek. Hronek got a first and a second. The first was middle of the round. It became ASP. Detroit's probably very happy with that trade in the long run. So I think the bidding for Dobson would have to start at a first and a second, or a first and like a B+ prospect.
Yeah, I think if the Islanders, if they trade Noah Dobson, they still need to get some kind of right-handed defenseman back or some kind of defenseman to improve the team, because I don't think Tony DeAngelo is a sustainable. He can be a third pair guy that gives you 17 to 18 minutes a night, and I really like the Scott Perunovich pick, but they need to find a long-term partner for Alex Romanov. I think that is for sure, and they don't have that currently in the system. So I'm for flipping Dobson for assets, but you better have a plan and a short list of how, like with what the Vancouver Canucks did with trading Bo Horvat and using those assets to go and get Philip Hronek. You need to have some kind of plan, because I don't think that if you trade Noah Dobson just for assets and you keep those assets, like, why don't you just blow it the hell up at that point? Because he is the youngest player within this core. So yeah, they're doing this retool, and I don't think it's going to have the same success to Washington Capitals, but I see some kind of vision of saying this current core is not good enough. The worst thing that is possible for this team is to re-sign Dobson on some 8x8, re-sign Brock Nelson on some 5 to 6 year deal to get the cap hit low, and just run it back. So, like, although I don't love the idea of a retool, I think that they maybe should more so go down the line of a rebuild. it seems like Lou finally is making moves to a degree, or looking to make moves.
The thing that concerns me about flipping is, like you said, Noah Dobson is the youngest player in this core. If you're going to do like a 3-team whip around to end up trading Dobson for current good players, if you end up trading Dobson for older guys than Dobson is, and you just make your team older, I'm not sure you're going to make it significantly better from a Dobson trade. So if you get older and not better, and your ceiling is still a wild card team losing in the first round, that seems like bad asset management. Should they blow it all up? Maybe they should, but Lou's already under a couple years of bad asset management, and it seems pretty tough to blow up the Barzal Horvat at this point.
Yeah, they have a shit ton of term, but it's looking like he's not trying to add to that much of that long-term deals, because he's only offering Brock Nelson a 3-year deal right now, which I was very encouraged to hear. Probably 3 years, 5.5 to 5.625 million dollars. I'm all with Lou on that. You take that deal, you kind of retire as a New York Islander, or you get traded. And maybe that's the best thing for Brock Nelson. Maybe he wants some kind of change of scenery, especially if it's to like Minnesota or Winnipeg, because he's from War Road, which is like right on the border of the two. Both of them are kind of his hometown team. But yeah, I think the Islanders are smart for kind of giving him this ultimatum. You either get shipped out to a contender, which is still a good situation, or you retire as an Islander. We're not giving you some absurd 5 to 6 year deal at way too much money and way too much term. What do you think about it?
I think that Nelson is also not essential to the Islanders' big picture. They have other players who are younger than Nelson, who are on long-term contracts, who do the things that Brock Nelson does. That's not me saying he's bad. It's me saying moving Brock Nelson in a way that gets them younger or adds some wing scoring and some long-term security is probably better off than just extending Brock Nelson some more.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a very interesting next 4 to 5 months for the New York Islanders. Like, they could blow it up and just say, screw it, trade Brock Nelson for a first and a third, get the second and a third for Kyle Palmieri, get a first and a second for Noah Dobson. They could technically blow it up. Someone would take Sorokin. I don't think that that's going to happen, but yeah, they're not in as bad a situation as like a year ago, which is encouraging to a degree. It's looking like they're they're making some kind of moves relatively soon instead of just locking up the core like I thought they would.
I do wonder if part of the plan is maybe to go after some big fish. I'm not sure who that big fish would be at this point, because Rantanen and Miller have already been traded, and Pettersson maybe won't be traded. But the only other comparison I could come up with looking through doing the research on this, right, for who recently is like a young-ish top 4 right-handed defenseman, right side playing defenseman, right, who gets traded, Mackenzie Weegar potentially as a Dobson comp. And what did Weegar get traded for? He was like one half of a huge superstar package. Dobson makes sense to me as one half of a huge superstar package. Brock Nelson would fit really nice as the other half. I guess the question is just like, right, which player out there could you get with that?
Rantanen apparently not a ton of talks on extensions. That apparently LA Freeman said that they might be willing to flip him. That would be insane. I would be down for that. That would be very exciting as a New York Islanders fan to kind of pull that off. But even trading for Mackenzie Weegar, now that you mentioned that, apparently the Flames don't want to trade their core pieces. Maybe Rasmus Anderson on that right side. You bet on a bounce back, even though he's kind of stinking it up this season. It's at least the last 3 off seasons the last 3 deadlines have been horrifying as an Islanders fan for the most part. Or last 2, because like Lou is just like
trading first for a guy in his 30s.
Like it's good to have so much flexibility now compared to like Lou is dead set on being super aggressive. It seems like he's open minded to a degree, and the table is wide open in terms of what they could potentially do.
They could go on a run and then buy again at this deadline. Yeah. That's also possible.
They've been on a run, so that would be crazy. Another guy that might potentially be available, and this guy is pretty young compared to Brock Nelson, Jared McCann, 2.5 years at $5 million. This was reported by Jacob Stoller, who works for Sportsnet. He covers the Winnipeg Jets, so he is pretty plugged in. It's not some random source, and my Winnipeg people confirmed that he's pretty legit. He's a great piece. Any team, any team, even like teams coming out of a rebuild, even like the San Jose Sharks, should be all over a guy like Jared McCann that is only 28 years old, 2 seasons removed from a 40-goal season. Even this year, great underlying numbers, just not finishing the same, shooting like 9%. He's awesome. $5 million is fucking nothing. Even when he signed that deal for Seattle, I was like, what is he doing? That's way too little money. And yeah, I think that he'd get a monster return. I got a YouTube video fucking ready to go on him and the hypothetical trades once we get more confirmation that he could potentially be available for Seattle. I don't know what the hell their plan is. I guess they're trying to retool, rebuild. But Ron Francis shouldn't be in charge of that rebuild, retool, considering he went aggressively all in with, not all in terms of assets, but free agency with Montour and Chandler Stevenson's deal. Seattle is in just like a really weird spot, and a team might get really lucky and fleece them for Jared McCann. What do you think?
Yeah, I love McCann as a player. He's an amazing goal scorer. He's pretty solid as an all-around player. He can even play center for you. He's probably not, you don't want to bring him in as your 2C necessarily, but he did step up into that role in Pittsburgh from time to time as a center, and he was pretty okay at that. I think as good as the player is, the contract is even better. Mm-hmm. I mean, once this cap jump happens this summer, I'm not sure if people are fully wrapping their head around how the cap jump is going to work. $5 million is third liner money starting next year. There are third liners who are going to sign for bigger contracts, a lot more money than Jared McCann is getting paid. Mm-hmm. And Jared McCann could be, your number 1 left wing or number 2 center, maybe. The trade package that comes to mind for me is Brandon Hagel, who was a different situation, obviously a lot younger, cheaper deal. He was a lesser player at that point too, to be clear. But just like Hagel's the kind of guy where, right, they trade him for 2 firsts, and it's like, I don't know if Hagel's a good enough player for that kind of a trade package. But you're not just trading for the player, you're trading for the contract and how much of a discount that is. And this McCann contract is a huge discount. Like, if he was a free agent this summer, he'd be getting at least $8 million, no doubt about it.
Yeah, probably. Steven Stamkos was getting $8 million. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he is available. This is something where it's like it's not pressing for Seattle to trade him at this year's deadline. That's what kind of makes this interesting. We might just be hearing about his name for the next year. He might be the new Jacob Chikrin or something like that on Seattle, just thinking it up. Because, yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense for Seattle to keep him for the next 2.5 seasons when they're not going to be doing jack dick the next 2.5 seasons. And then you lock him up on some kind of 6 to 8 year deal at like $8-9 million. So yeah, I think it's actually smart for Seattle to get ahead of the curve and potentially trade him, but it's also admitting that the Ron Francis era has been an absolute disaster, and you probably need to rebuild and get a top 10 picks the next 2 years.
Oh, agreed. I mean, not only do I not love any of the moves Ron Francis has made the last 2 years, I also don't think that like a mini retool around Beniers and Shane Wright is going to work out. They're going to have to
get a top 5 pick
I don't think
year.
that those guys are the kind of like blue chip elite players that you can build around. I think the guys that's whatever good team Seattle ends up becoming a while from now, that team's not going to be built around Beniers and Shane Wright. It's going to be built around some other very high draft pick in the next couple of years.
Yeah, if there's a team that needs Matthew Schaefer in this year's draft, needs the first overall pick, it might be Seattle, just because like their only young defenseman even on the roster in the pipeline is like Riker Evans. Like they actually have a pretty good young forward core. Not sure they have any guys that are ever going to turn into like legit star above point per game kind of guys, but Beniers, Wright, Berkeley Cadden, Jagger Firkus, they could all be very good top 6 forwards. You still definitely need that franchise guy, but they have fucking nothing defensively. Like it is a barren wasteland for the most part. Caden Price is okay. They have Dragicevic, I believe, but he's bad defensively. So like they need some kind of young defenseman, and they need to stink it this year. Trade McCann, enter, rebuild, retool. It's good. It's a good year to be tanking 2025, 2026, 2027. There's some really good prospects. So I could see them coming out of that. It's going to be a tough sell on ownership and the fans 4 years into your existence to enter like a retool, a heavy retool, rebuild. But it's probably what's best for this team because, again, their current NHL roster isn't that young and it isn't that good.
No, I would hope that at least the fans will stick with it if it's like this is at least like a young and exciting team. Mm-hmm. Like as long as, Shane Wright's getting his minutes and being given the opportunity. Kakko's another guy who's like young and growing. So hopefully the fans are at least like, this isn't a great team, but it's an entertaining one. It can be like a fun, young, good offense, bad defense team, the way that San Jose is right now.
Yeah, compared to like a Chicago where it's just Bedard, the rest
Yeah.
is all shit. Yeah, they still have a very good pool, but yeah, it's far away, and the current contracts on the books are kind of going to weigh them down.
Yeah, it's really
Relatively
hard
soon.
to retool with how little cap flexibility they're going to have.
Yeah, that's the talk on McCann. We got 2 injuries that we didn't hit last time, or they happened since the last time. Barzal's injury got leaked that it's 6 weeks. So when talking about the Islanders, if it is 6 weeks, that's actually pretty encouraging. I thought it was going to be like the rest of the season. I thought he broke his kneecap or something like that. Maybe that encourages Lou to buy at the deadline if he thinks that, oh, we're getting Barzal back in mid-March. And Marchenko out 6 to 8 weeks. That's kind of devastating with the Monahan injury as well. They're probably out of the playoffs. They are out of the playoffs right now, but like in terms of the actual race.
I don't want to say that that's it for Columbus. They're done. Just because the middle class of the East is so mediocre this year, it's hard for me to say that anyone is done. I mean,
Canadians are done. They've gone like 1-6.
yes, the Patrick Laine cold streak has effectively ended the Canadians' run. But, you know, they're within 1 game of Ottawa and Detroit, who are, you know, basically at full health and looking pretty bad right now.
Senators have Pinto and Norris out, but
Norris is always out. I'm not sure that counts too much.
Yeah, true.
It's interesting also because right, Barzal and Marchenko, those 2 guys, those are the teams who have the best rental forward left on the trade market and the best rental defenseman left on the trade market, right? In Nelson and Provorov there.
Defenseman Provorov though.
Yeah.
Said forward.
Nelson's the best forward rental
Yep.
available.
So,
Provorov's the best defenseman rental available. And depending on how the next couple weeks go, maybe neither of them will actually be available for trade. We don't know, which would make the trade deadline really dire.
Hopefully both not my Islanders, but hopefully the Columbus. I think it will maybe make Don Waddell think that we need to get Provorov traded.
I saw like before the Marchenko injury, like a couple days before, he said he intended to be a buyer at this year's deadline. I don't know how long that can hold up. I mean,
they are getting Boone Jenner back. That's going to be positive, but he's not as good as Monahan or Marchenko.
But even then, they're not dead in the water with what they have now, right? I mean, Kent Johnson has stepped up big time. Fantilli's stepped up enough. Yegor Chinikov is hurt now, but will probably be back quite a bit before Marchenko. That's a guy who has real breakout upside as a top 6 scoring wing. I mean, do I expect Columbus to make the playoffs? No, but I think it's definitely possible. I mean, I think of it as like a 1 in 3 chance, not like a 10% chance.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely good to I guess to tell the group, like, if you sell Provorov, that's kind of management just saying your season's over, pack it up. But if they buy, they shouldn't buy like a first round pick or something ridiculous like that. But if they buy slightly, bring in some veteran guy, and that's Don Waddell saying, you guys go, like, I believe in you guys. So I guess that is valuable. But yeah, I'm a little bit pessimistic on the Blue Jackets compared to other people. They have been slumping a little bit. You want to get into our follower takes?
Let's get into it.
Okay, on Instagram, in the box pod, we ask you guys from takes from time to time, not hot takes, just like 50-50, and we say whether we agree or disagree. Up first from Ephraim Roseboom, Edmonton gets Gibson at some point the next 2 years. 3, 2, 1,
Disagree.
I don't want to root against Stuart Skinner, but I think it's perfectly possible. Even if Stuart Skinner doesn't play horrible in this year's playoffs and Edmonton loses, I can get behind the idea of bringing in Gibson just for 2 years. Mentor kind of Stuart Skinner. But Stuart Skinner's still only like 26 years old. For a goaltender, he's still relatively young. So would I put this at a perfect 50-50 shot? Probably not. Probably like 30-70. But yeah, I think when you look at Edmonton, the goaltenders that are going to be on the market this summer, there really isn't that much. Maybe you can probably like Freddie Anderson outside of Carolina if they believe in Chekhov a ton. But yeah, there's really not that many options, and Gibson is playing so good of late. You're gonna have to probably get Anaheim to retain a little bit. 6.4 might be a little bit too rich. But yeah, Stuart Skinner locked up at only $2.6 million, so you can fit both of them at like a $7.5 million cap if you get some retention.
I don't think that Stuart Skinner is the answer necessarily, but I don't see how the money's going to work with Gibson. I mean, the Draisaitl contract kicks in next year. McDavid's right after that. Bouchard's extension really soon. I mean, I think getting a veteran in to help Skinner would be a really good idea. I don't see how you make the money work for Gibson to be that guy.
he's the one guy. Again, I've shat on John Gibson years prior. He's been bad years prior, but he's bounced back in a big way. I can't see Edmonton walking into McDavid. I mean, maybe McDavid signs an extension on July 1st and it's all good and he's staying forever. But like McDavid, a contract year going into that season, if let's say they lose the Western Conference in the Western Conference Finals or before that, running it back with Stuart Skinner. If they run it back with Stuart Skinner, they better get like a monster second pair right-handed defenseman or something like that to compensate for it. Some type of move has to happen. And I think Gibson just is the easiest one. I know the cap is a little bit hard, but I don't think Anaheim can ask for like that much for him, considering they have their guy of the future. It's not like they're in this position where Gibson's going to play 50 games for them. Like they're trying to move him out because he's a negative money, even with him playing so good. Like he's only going to be playing 30 to 35 games. So yeah, I think it gets done. I want a blockbuster like that. And we saw so many goalies get moved last offseason. There's not going to be as big of a market in terms of this offseason, so Edmonton can just pluck them up.
They'll pluck someone up. I just don't think it's going to be him.
All right, fair. Bobby Vank says Rantanen will not be re-signed. 3, 2, 1. Agree.
Disagree.
I think the thing is, like, do you go into the trade deadline with him unsigned? Like, it's a lot of risk. They did it with Gensel last year, walked for nothing, and Gensel was good for them in the playoffs. But I'm not sure if Carolina's going to be doing the same thing. So I think if it's past the deadline and he's unsigned, I think for sure he's probably hitting the open market. And I'll lean with that right now. I guess that they don't want to give him some kind of mega deal. They have their own internal cap, maybe akin to a Colorado Avalanche, funny enough. And this might be looking like more of a rental instead of giving him 13.5, 13.75, especially after the announcement of the cap jumps. I'm sure his price is raised as well. I'll go with no, and maybe that's optimistic thinking because I want him out of the Metro Division.
I think that a lot of people, social media mostly, I don't see a lot of this from insiders. A lot of people are overreacting to Rantanen having a rough first.
No, I'm not saying like, oh, they don't want this bum anymore. I'm not going to act like that.
Some people are saying that. Some people are looking at him scoring like 1 point in
dumb.
his first 4 games and being like, oh, Carolina's going to want to get rid of him for nothing.
Yeah, those people
no, they're not. He's a superstar. Carolina has a ton of cap room this summer. And unless they plan to let Rantanen leave and sign Marner in as a 1-for-1 replacement, there is nothing else for them to spend all that money on out there.
Yeah, maybe Dobson and Nelson for Rantanen will get it done. Lucas Gerbs Soddle, sorry if I botched your name on that. I'm bad with names. Dallas is the best team in the West. 3, 2, 1.
Disagree.
I think right now, a team's going to make deadline moves and get better than them. Maybe not best, but most well-balanced, if that makes sense. Like, I think the highs of Edmonton is maybe a little bit higher with their top pair and their overall forward core and just their superstar talent compared to Dallas. But yeah, I think Dallas, after getting Granlund, we're saying like a fully healthy Dallas, obviously. Heiskanen, Sagan off LTIR, the way that they're currently constructed, I think probably is the best team in the Western Conference. Would I pick them? That's maybe a little bit of different debate, but who's your best team in the West, if not?
I like Edmonton and Vegas both more than Dallas
Vegas.
right now. I think that Dallas is the best team on paper if you assume that the guys who were great last year and mediocre this year are going to be great again.
Robertson and Johnson are playing much, much better.
They're picking it up really good. Stankoven still have some questions
he's
on
gone
there.
cold. Yeah, I can't defend that one.
Hintz very up and down all year long. Even like has Heiskanen been as great as you'd expect to see?
No,
Probably
yeah.
not. Some of the guys are exceeding expectations. Duchesne's the big one. How long can he hold that up at his age? Tyler Seguin is old and often injured. Can you actually count on him coming back from LTIR and being the caliber of player that you expect him to be? They have too many questions for me. Like, I see what Edmonton and Vegas look like. I see the teams they're putting out there. Given that, like, Mark Stone is healthy right now, and I know what he looks like right now, I'm comfortable with that pick.
Yeah, that's fair. If you think that Vegas's wingers can step up in a big way come playoff time, I definitely understand that. I was going to say, I again, I'm not sure I would pick Dallas, but I think just on paper, post-deadline, before the Granlund trade, maybe not. But yeah, considering they're the one Western contender that made a definite improvement deal, Colorado got worse, arguable, or did get worse this year versus Dallas buys. The right side of the defense is definitely scary, but yeah, I think that they are the best team on paper right now. Lastly, I switched this up a little bit. He said the first round pick, but I'm going to go with 2nd through 4th. and I'll explain why. But Malmer Hajic says if if San Jose gets the first overall pick, they should trade it. I changed it to the second through fourth. That's one we're gonna do. 3, 2, 1.
Disagree.
I,
Are we doing a 4-for-4 split?
I'm gonna go with an agree on this one. If it's second through fourth, like should trade it like 1000%. No. If an offer comes in for a 22, 23-year-old that a team maybe is looking towards a rebuild, retool, and they want that first over or that second through fourth pick, I think that's something you consider. I think it is. I don't love Higgins, Misa, or Martone at this point. If it's first overall, you take Matthew Schaefer. He's a massive upgrade over Sam Dickinson. He's your franchise number 1 defenseman. But I think with the way that their forward core is looking right now, again, it has to be the right deal. I'm not saying should, like they're on an NHL 25, like doing like the trade finder and like picking whatever the best deal is out of that. But I think that there could be some deals out there that they could get 2 very good young players for that second, third, fourth overall pick instead of taking Higgins, Misa, Martone, who at this point you could strongly argue would be their 4th best forward going forward, behind Celebrini, Eklund, Smith.
I mean, I guess my disagree here is pretty slight because I do love Higgins. I'm a big Higgins guy.
That's fair.
If this question was, if they get the 3rd or 4th pick, should they trade it? I would say probably yes. I just think that Higgins is a top-tier prospect, and I would happily keep the number 2 and go with him.
Yeah, I love James Higgins, Long Island native, but yeah, I think Higgins is about the same as he's a slightly better Will Smith. Better for sure, but I don't think that there's like this massive gap where if you traded the 2nd, 3rd overall pick, you could also just, even though I don't love the rest of the draft, if you traded it back and just got more quantity of assets. I know San Jose has a large quantity of good assets, but you could sell me on them moving back to the 7th and 11th and taking Roger McQueen and Jackson Smith wouldn't be available there, but instead opt for that. But it's a good problem to have. San Jose, like saying, like you already have so many good young forwards. I think it could be a move to improve that defense core and get an elite young defenseman or something like that. Not try to win now next season, but improve the team in terms of getting some 23, 24, 25-year-old. And it could be something where you get that guy in a first-round pick back, where you still get a high-end asset that you could maybe draft well on. But yeah, I just think, those top 3 forwards, I like them a lot. I think they're going to be very good first liners, but just not that much. They don't move me that much as I thought coming into the season.
The other question, of course, is it actually a true guarantee that Schaefer goes 1, right? Because you totally could end up with a situation where, maybe Anaheim gets the top pick.
Chicago.
And Anaheim's thinking like, our defensive guys looking forward are actually pretty good. We like Zellweger and them, the young group. The forwards, McTavish and Zegras and them have really dried up, and we probably want to go forward here. I think possible.
I think Chicago is the number 1 spot where that could happen, considering they went Leshinov in 2024. They have Korchinski, who's now developing well. They have Sam Renzel, who's playing very good at the college level. But I'm starting to come to I had him back in December as my number 1 guy, not massively, but like I'm starting to think that Schaefer is kind of the runaway, just because Higgins has kind of been good at BC, but the production hasn't been off the charts. And watching him, I'm not sure that he has the tools to be next level. Misa's been a monster. I like his production in the OHL is ridiculous. Will it translate to the NHL is definitely something. Does he have those tools to be that next level guy? But I think it's Schaefer, probably Chicago, maybe Anaheim. I'm trying to think of who else. Buffalo, I guess, also could. Yeah, they have Dahlin.
Yeah, Buffalo
and Power.
Dahlin, Power, maybe Byram. Maybe you get rid of him.
Yeah, I think if they were going to go Schaefer, they would definitely get rid of Byram. But I guess those are the 2. I think Chicago and Buffalo for sure would consider not going Schaefer. Anaheim maybe as well. San Jose, obviously, if they get first overall, you don't trade that pick. In any circumstances. But yeah, that's the podcast. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be seeing the next one. Hopefully a preview of, we'll probably record Tuesday, right? After the 4 Nations.
Yeah, definitely after those games.
To get a championship game preview. We'll be seeing the next one. Peace.